Well, there's a whole nother part of the S-gauge modeling community, and that's S-gaugers. S-gaugers normally are modelers and have a lot of American Flyer. It's much like the Lionel three-railers versus the O-scale modelers. But S-gaugers are also modelers. And so now we'd like to have S-gaugers talk about what the S-gauge market is and what S-gauge modeling is all about. And we have a company called American Models, whose owner is Karen Bashipa. And Karen, I looked for you a few minutes ago and you weren't here yet. Are you here yet? Then I don't know what the problem may be. She may be having a problem logging in. But to host this segment of it is the person who is really the spokesperson for S-Fest in October of this year in St. Louis. His name is Joel Weber. And Joel is an S-gauge modeler and is going to host this segment of our shows for us. So Joel, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm technologically challenged and I haven't figured out how to turn my monitor on because most of the time I don't use it. So you can't see my face, and that may be to your benefit. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can hear you fine.
Briefly, I've been playing around with S-gauge and American Flyer since the early 90s when I moved to Atlanta and my parents sent me the two trains that we had when I was a kid. And my neighbor was an American Flyer guy, got all excited and introduced me to the swap meet market for American Flyer, and an addiction was born. And so here I am today. And, you know, I love playing with the trains, but I was born in 56. So by the time I was aware of life, steam engines had come and gone. I remember being in Grand Island, Nebraska, and we heard a train in the distance. We ran to the corner to see if yellow engines or red engines were going to go by, because the UP and the Burlington route both went through Grand Island. So I don't remember steam engines as a child. Certainly appreciate them and enjoy them and that sort of thing, but that was not part of my growing up. You know, trains on a table are fine to me, but I also have gotten the hook into scenery. So we moved to suburban Chicago when I built a layout in the basement, and I was doing a lot of scenery, and then got into some other hobbies and really slowed down my development, and we moved and I tore that layout down. Fortunately, the center of it went to the basement of a friend's house, so it didn't completely go in the dumpster. But now I'm down here and rebuilding a layout, and my grandson thinks that my trains are the bomb and that Pop Pop is awesome. So really getting re-energized. So to me, modeling is about need. And one of the things, for instance, I needed was a bridge to cross a chasm here. And what I had built in Naperville was I took some Plasticville truss bridges, modify, you know, they're basically built to set on a table. You put the bottom in, you run a track on it. They're literally resting on a table. Well, I built the understructure of the bridge for them and turned them into more of a model bridge, and had two pair of them running parallel. But they were too long and too wide. When I switched from Flyer spacing to more of a scale spacing using American Models track on the top of the layout, they were too wide. So, and also two of them were too long and one of them were too short. So I said, you know, I need to build my own bridge, and voila, there it is. I literally drew my initial design on the back of a piece of Christmas wrap because it had a grid on it. A blueprint that would make most people shudder. But it gave me the ability to measure angles and start to cut pieces. And I built my jig to glue it up. And ultimately, what I got is what you see. The building underneath it is a motel. I call it the No-Tell Motel. It came about because in my previous layout, I had those other bridges I talked about went over a river scene, and I had some O gauge children from Artista that in S gauge would be young adults, and those were my swimmers. Well, like, okay, I don't have a river scene in my new layout. So I thought a hotel with a swimming pool. So you don't see the swimming pool yet because I haven't built it yet, but I'm going to have a graduation party at the No-Tell Motel and the kids are all hanging out at the swimming pool. So that's how I come up with stuff. Whatever fits the layout gives me something to work with. That building was built. The undercarriage of it is basic balsa wood. I had bought some cardstock brick facing or stone facing years back at a train store that I walked through. Had it sitting in the cabinet, and so that's the facing of the building, and the side is plastruct siding, and plastruct material is the roof. And I've got, and I apologize, the name is escaping me, the doors and the windows, which are S-gauge doors and windows, S-scale doors and windows, complete the scene. Frankly, the fact that it's 4 units in office is what fits in the space. So that's kind of how I do things. I make up what I need to fit the space I've got. One of the things I had on my previous layout, and I now have on this layout, and I think it's coming through. Hold on here. I'm trying to bring through a different picture. And it doesn't seem to be translating. New share. Okay, let's try that. Being technologically challenged. What I was trying to show is in my previous layout, I built, when I set up the table, I put in it because it was 6 feet deep. I put a 2x2 space in the layout. Here we go. Okay, do you see the building?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I had a 2 foot by 2 foot space in the layout, and I'm a logistics person. I've been in warehousing all my life, and I've worked a lot of years in refrigerated warehouse. So I thought, well, what's the best thing to wrap a 2x2 space is build a warehouse. So 4 walls, that roof lifts out. I have now detailed the dock. I've got to add a loading ramp to the grade level door on the right. I've got 5 dock doors in the middle. I've got an office to the right and the mechanical building to the left, all built to support, in essence, a 2x2 space, and the rail docks on the back side, which is yet to be detailed. So to me, that was, I need to hide the space, I need to make it fit, and it needs to be something that works for me because of my background, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really about making something work for me. This is a concrete arch bridge I built because I needed, you know, that bridge or the trestle that you saw behind the trestle you see back here, which is just built out of wood to take the upper level across the lower level, needed to transition, and I needed to bring the track around, and the road from the layout or the warehouse goes underneath there. That bridge is built with 3 plies of 2-inch building foam, glued together, shaped, smoothed out with joint compound, sanded and painted. And it makes a nice concrete arch bridge that sets up the layout. So to me, I like working in scale size when I'm doing like doors, like the dock on my warehouse. Those dock doors are scale height from the ground. The doors themselves are a scale size. I've got the bumpers around them. This is all from my past in refrigerated warehousing. Obviously, a concrete bridge is pretty fluid. You can do a lot of different things. An arch bridge, like you saw earlier, is pretty fluid. I wanted it to make sense to the trains. I didn't want it overly tall, overly short. I wanted it to make sense. The details in it, I derived from, well, first off, the basic structure was derived from studying books that chronicled bridges. The final details I settled on literally by walking under a railroad bridge when my wife and I were walking the dogs, and I looked up in there and studied kind of what they did. And I had several thoughts about how I was going to do the upper trusses and or the upper connections. I'm not sure the right technical word for that. But once I walked onto that bridge, I knew what I wanted to do. And that's kind of how I roll. It's, you know, I certainly have, here's a bridge that I needed to come across through here. That's a piece of 1/2-inch plywood clad with plastic or plastruct material that I detailed out and painted. The track goes across there. It's ballasted. If you look underneath it, it's a piece of plywood. But unless you crawl under the layout, which you need to do to get in the middle of the layout, you don't see that. So the part that you see is detailed. And of course, I have to have mountains. And you kind of see this. Does my mouse show up on the screen?
Yes.
That area that I'm kind of highlighting, that piece comes out. And when I'm done painting it, that will be relatively hidden, because in this mountain, if the train derails, I need to be able to get to it. So I literally will be able to pull that piece out. I did that with my corner mountain in Naperville, where I was probably 8 feet down one wall and 4 feet down the other. And I had a 2-track upper and 1-track lower that went through the mountain. And I had 2 panels that I could pull off. And unless I pulled them off, anybody who came to visit the layout never knew they were there. I painted them in place so that when you paint them and you put your grass in there and your trees and this and that, it just obscures the seam to the point, unless you know it's there, you don't see it. And I enjoy doing stuff like that. Another thing I did is this fire house was just a building front. So I built the building, but one of the things I did different, most of my buildings have a flat roof. In Chicago, a lot of your industrial and commercial buildings have these rounded roofs. So I took a piece of flat plastic, much like you'd make your flat roof, took a piece of that building foam, shaped it, smoothed it with either joint compound or spackle. I don't remember which, because it was enough years ago, and then painted it. And you see a lot of these round type roofs when you're riding the L in Chicago and you're up above the buildings, you see these. And I thought I ought to have a building that looks like that. This is a kit that is all well and good, and the roof is off right now. But the thing I'm going to do with this, I've painted the walls with, I mean, I painted them a base color. I had an HO modeler come and teach me how to dry brush and make realistic looking brick. And we painted it, and then I dry brushed various elements on it. We sealed it. Ultimately, though, is what I'm going to do is build the whole inside with work platforms. This is an engine house. There'll be work platforms in there. I've already got people with machinery and things that you might use, you know, a table saw and stuff like that. I can't wait to have the time to model this. Right now, it's just sitting in its space on the layout, which is a dead end yard outside the layout, going down the one wall. So I like to model my buildings when my layout in Chicago was using what I call what is known as Gargraves track, which is more like the old toy track in terms of size. The rails, the ties, they're oversized. And that was fine. I did it at the time because it was cheaper, it was quick. I could do that, but I always knew that when I moved from there, and I knew that someday we would, I was going to go to a more scale looking track. I'm not going to get rid of the high rail wheels and the big high rail couplers. I have too much rolling stock to convert, but I want the track to be scale because it fits better with the vehicles and the people and the buildings. You know, in S scale / S gauge, we don't have a lot of stuff to work with in terms of buildings and some of those things. But one thing we do have a lot of is vehicles, because a lot of your vehicles are made in at or close to 1/64 scale. and there's enough people out there available that you can do great scenery in S scale. And I wanted my scenery to be S scale because a lot of my trains are American models and other manufacturers that, even though you can buy them with high rail wheels and high rail couplers, you can also buy them with scale wheels and scale couplers, but the car itself is the same. And they're so much better looking than the original American Flyer stuff that's what I run most of the time. They
Joel?
have, yes, sir.
Joel, I hate to do this, but we're out of time for this segment.
No, that's fine. I can ramble it, so I'm happy to be cut off. But that's kind of an introduction of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
And I think that everybody can see that, whether you're an S gauge or an S scale modeler, modeling is modeling. And that's why I think it's important to show people that are doing both. And Joel, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and look forward to seeing you again next month.
Very good.